Hello, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us today in this conversation with Richie Jackson, who's going to be talking to us about his book, Gay Like Me. My name is Ricardo. I work on our YouTube staffing team, and I'm super excited to be moderating this conversation right now. Now, before we get started, I wanted to quickly go ahead and set the tone. We are obviously in the midst of a very challenging time right now with everything happening in the country and in the world. We're all processing and navigating these times in different ways. And so on a personal note, I'm committed to ensuring that we don't shy away from addressing the very real issues that are affecting us. During this Pride Month, I encourage the entire LGBTQ plus community to not just celebrate our progress, but address the work that still needs to be done, to acknowledge the privileges that many of us still have, and to understand the inevitable ways that this affects all of us. So I encourage us to continue unapologetically supporting our Black community, always and especially during this time. And I am particularly excited because I know that Richie is going to be touching on these elements as well throughout the conversation. So with that, I'd love to introduce Richie. He is the author of Gay Like Me, published by HarperCollins. He writes the monthly column In Gay We Trust for The Advocate. He is an award-winning Broadway, television, and film producer who most recently produced the Tony Award-nominated Harvey Fierstein's Torch Song on Broadway. He executive produced Showtime's Nurse Jackie, Emmy and Golden Globe nominee for Best Comedy Series, for 7 seasons, and co-executive produced the film Short Bus, written and directed by John Cameron Mitchell. As an alumnus of NYU Tisch School of the Arts, he endowed a fellowship program at his alma mater in 2015 to assist graduates in the transition from academia to a lifelong career in the arts called the Richie Jackson Artist Fellowship. He and his husband, Jordan Roth, were honored with the Trevor Project's 2016 Trevor Hero Award, and they live in New York City with their 2 sons. So with that, let's go ahead and welcome Richie to the stage.
Hi.
Hey, Richie, thank you so much for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. We're all super excited to talk about your book. I know that I devoured it in one day, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts and dig a little bit deeper. Before we do that, though, I'd love to just start at a little more high level. Given the fact that it is Pride Month, I know that I and many others have been reflecting a lot about how oftentimes an LGBTQ community narrative is actually a cis white gay narrative. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on how your experience is translatable to a broader community and how it's not.
Well, I think, we have to recognize this rainbow flag that we're all so happy to wave, that it's not just stripes on a flag so that everybody feels represented. The fact is we are linked together. We rise and fall together. And none of us are free unless all of us are. Every one of our fights belongs to all of us. And the current climate, the Trump administration has declared war on the LGBTQ community, and they're coming after the most vulnerable among us, the trans community. And that fight is as much my fight as a transgender person's fight. We all have to accept responsibility to fight every one of the injustices that is happening to our community. There is an epidemic of transgender women of color being murdered. There were 22 last year, and it continues this year. And the rates of poverty in the transgender, Black transgender community is high. All of the issues that racism affects to the larger community adversely affects on a much higher level to our Black transgender community. And so we have to look at all of those issues of poverty, of access to healthcare, of the violence against the trans community. And I really want to make sure that we all take responsibility and making it our fight. And if you think it's not your fight, if you say I'm not Black queer person or I'm not a Black trans person, I promise you that the Trump administration is not going to stop at the T in the LGBTQ community. They come for the most vulnerable and they're going to go down the line. and they will come to you next.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. Again, we're hitting on the importance of intersectionality, on the importance of fighting for all of us. And something that I think is important.
I'm sorry, but intersectionality is our strength. That is what makes our community so special. Where every ethnicity, we're every religion, we're in every culture. That's what we're immigrants, we're refugees, we're people with disabilities. Every fight is our fight because we are everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that you hit on a very important point, that we are a community. We're all united and together, but we are very diverse. Yes. And we have very different experiences. And it's almost like you can take the term LGBTQ and you can see the different elements that make up the rainbow of our community. And so with that, I also realized in the book you use the term gay a lot, right? Which I think a lot of us use, not just specifically for someone who identifies as male and is gay. So I'd love to know, when you use the term gay, do you refer to gay as LGBTQ or something else?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I wrote Gay Like Me as a letter to my husband and my older son. When he was 15, he told us he was gay, and I was elated. I wanted him to be gay. I had hoped he'd be gay. My greatest wish was that he would be gay. And then he said, Daddy, being gay is not a big deal. My generation doesn't think it's a big deal. So I wrote to specifically talk about what it means to be a gay man and what it takes to be a gay man in America, what it takes to be LGBTQ. He taught me that the word queer is positive. It's not a word I used when I was growing up. It was always used against me. Have always been very uncomfortable with it. And now, because of my son, and he's widened my idea of what it means, what being queer means. And I'm using that word much more now than I ever have.
Wow, well, thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of us in the audience, or at least those that identify as LGBTQ+, would have loved for a father to say that you were elated. And I remember reading that line in the book and thinking that's incredible. Do you mind me asking, what was your reaction beyond elated? Can you dive a little deeper into the specifics? Yes. How did you feel, and how would you have felt if you found out that he wasn't gay?
He says I would have been disappointed if I found out he wasn't gay. But you know, the real disappointment would have been if I wanted him to be nothing like me. How could I have parented with any self-esteem if every day I prayed, please don't be like me, please don't be like me? I was so excited because being gay is the best part about me. It's the most interesting part about me. It's been the blessing of my life. Why would I not want that blessing for him? Then the fear started to come in. A year after he came out to us, Donald Trump was elected and brought with him to Washington Mike Pence, both more of a threat to my son than ISIS and North Korea. So while I was elated, I got very fearful. And that's why another impetus to write the book was to warn our son about what it takes to be LGBTQ, what it takes to be queer in America right now.
Absolutely. And I think given the current climate that we're in, it's obvious that you wrote this book with a sense of urgency. Like, it's very beautifully written, but I love the fact that time was of the essence when you wrote this book.
Right.
You also mentioned a little bit about how gay is a blessing and it's something beautiful, and I know that's a theme that's woven throughout the entire book, and we're gonna hit on that in a little bit, which I'm really excited about. But I'd love to learn a little bit more about the audience for the book. Obviously, your son was a inspiration, and this was written for him. I would guess that I'm probably somewhere between your age and your son's age. So as I was reading the book, not to age anyone, I'm just a guess. But for me, it really resonated. It resonated with me in many ways, right? Like, a lot of the things that you shared, I agreed with, and it's things that I want to share as well. But as a reader, I felt like those were things that I needed to hear. And so I'd love to hear from you who you think your broader audience is for this book.
Well, you know, I wrote the book to change the way we talk about queer people and how we think about ourselves. Think about what we go through as LGBTQ people. We disappoint our parents. We're at battle with our government. We're stigmatized by religions. We're bullied in our childhoods. We're erased in our classrooms. We've survived the plague. And still, we rise, come out, and say, "This is me." That is the spirit of an extraordinary species of people. That's how we should be thinking about ourselves. That's how we should be raised, that we are special. Think about, we are just 4.5% of the population, just 4.5%. We didn't come out wrong. That's not that 4.5% is a defect. We've been chosen. We have been chosen to see the world differently, to look at the world differently, to feel differently. That's a blessing. And if we don't diminish it, if we don't demean it by saying being queer doesn't define me, being queer is just a part of me, but if we take full advantage of the gift that it is, we will fulfill our destiny. So what I write about in the book and who I think the book is partly for ourselves. I wrote the book I so desperately needed when I was young to raise myself. I needed to learn how to have good gay self-esteem. I didn't have it when I moved to New York at 17 in 1983. So I wrote it for all of us to feel better about ourselves, to recognize that being gay is a gift. It's also for our parents to understand us better, or if they have a LGBTQ child or they think they do, my book will help you raise your child with good gay self-esteem. And it's for our friends. So they have to read it to understand us better, to know us better.
Definitely. I mean, so it sounds like the audience is limitless, right? It's endless. Everyone can read the book and get something out of it. I can completely vouch for that after reading it as well. And I like you just hit on a couple of points that there is beauty in being gay because of the struggle, because of everything that our community has fought for. And I love how you highlight the importance of not forgetting the work that was done decades ago to be able to have the privileges that we do have now.
Right.
So that's definitely a beautiful part of what makes our community so special and unique. Can you talk a little bit more about some of those elements that make us so special and why you think being gay is better than straight?
I do think being gay is better than being straight. Why not be different? If you have the chance to be different, it's such a gift. And I've never wanted to be straight. I never wanted to be like straight people. I never wanted to be accepted by straight people. What I talk about in the book is embracing your otherness, not scrubbing it off, not erasing it, but doubling down on it, hitting the gas on it, because it's your otherness, your uniqueness. That's where your gifts are. That's where all of your potential is. Being gay is a complete blank canvas. You have the freedom to do whatever you want, to be whatever you want. It is creativity and possibility. And that's what the freedom of otherness is if you embrace it.
Absolutely. And we see that theme throughout the book, shining a positive light on being a member of the LGBTQ plus community. But what's beautiful is you also don't shy away from the potential challenges, the very real challenges that the community.
It can be harrowing to be LGBTQ. It's a challenge.
And you beautifully phrase that for your son, to be proud of who he is, but to be aware of the challenges that he might face. And And you mentioned that being gay requires double vision. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Absolutely. So, as a gay American, I have double vision. And in my one view, I am very clear-eyed about how America sees me, how America treats me, how in danger I am, how marginalized I am. But in my other vision is my beautiful gayness, is everything I love about myself, the best part about myself, my gayness. And I never let the two visions meet because I do not want America's view to soil and spoil my own view of my gayness. So I keep both visions every single day, all day long. It is the exhaustive work of being queer. You have to have double vision. You have to have a clear eye on how you are treated in our country, how you are marginalized, and all over the world. And also make sure that you are feeding and nurturing your own sense of yourself, your own sense of your gayness, and keep it separate and keep it safe. Because the fight, the struggle that we all go through for our liberation is critical, but it cannot make you feel less than worthy, because all queer people are beautiful, they are worthy, and I believe that there is a life waiting for all of us, full of love and potential. We just have to believe it for ourselves and keep that clear-eyed.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you depict otherness as something beautiful. I know a lot of us growing up, other and different and weird were things that you didn't want to be, right? And the way that you write it in your book, it truly does make it feel like it's extraordinary, like it's unique, like you have an extra value at, which I think is wonderful.
I think our otherness is a superpower if we don't diminish it. Who wants to be normal? Who wants to be the same as everyone else? I grew up on Long Island in New York in a very stifling community. We were all Jewish. I went to a 98% Jewish public school. We all went to Hebrew school together. We all went to Little League together. Everybody was the same. When I realized in third grade I was gay, I was so excited because finally there was something different about me. I had this secret and it made me special. I felt lucky because I wasn't like everyone else. And I've never not felt that way.
Absolutely. Now, you say that you are other, and I know many on the call probably feel that as well. Yet there are people who look at your life, you're married, you've got children, and many of them might say that you have a heteronormative life. What do you say to those people?
I would say you could think I have a heteronormative life if you think straight people own marriage and parenting. I don't believe that. If they want to own something, they can own the NFL. They can have marriage and parenting.
That's beautiful. I love that. And it just adds this element of taking ownership for our community and dismantling these ideas that these beautiful moments in life just belong to one subset of people.
Right. I think all of us have our own personal aspirations, and there's no right or wrong aspiration, and nobody can claim ownership over any goal of yours.
Absolutely. Now, Richie, there was one chapter in particular that had a line that really, really struck me, and it said, "Coming out is every day." Now, this is for many people a momentous occasion. It could be positive, it could be negative, but it's one that has stuck with you, right? As a moment in your life that might change a lot. Can you talk about why you think that's a moment that continues to happen throughout your life?
Well, I didn't realize when I came out in 1983, I thought it would be like my bar mitzvah, where you become bar mitzvahed and you're a man, and then that's it. I thought, well, I'll come out, I'll be a gay man, and I will. But you have to come out every day. You come out to coworkers. You have to come out to your, doctors in your life, potential landlords. You have to decide whether you're going to come out in your workplace. You have to, I told our son that he should come out to his college roommate. I didn't want him to make his dorm room a closet. I come out when I am buying a gift for my husband. I have to talk to the sales clerk that I'm buying it for my husband, and will my husband like it, or will it fit him? I talk about what size he is, how tall he is. Every day is it coming out somewhere in some part of my life. And what I write in the book is you should only come out when you feel safe enough to do it. There's no shame in not coming out if it puts you in danger.
Absolutely. And I like that you explained that it's not even just coming out, but having to take the time to pause and make that decision. Is this the right moment for me? Not that I'm in the closet, but is this something that I want to share right now? And it's obvious that the most important for you in terms of your son is making sure that he's safe. So I think
So what I talk about in the book is our son had no gay guard. When he was about to leave our home, about to go to college, and he didn't notice when he was growing up that I would drop my husband's hand if we went down a street I didn't feel safe, or maybe I didn't kiss him goodbye on the subway. And he didn't know that I am constantly always aware of who's around me, who can hear me, what am I saying. And that gay guard is critical for him to stay safe. And that's what I talk about in the book, is building up that guard.
Absolutely. And even though we have made progress, like we mentioned at the beginning of the talk, there's still work that needs to be done. There are still places in this country where you can't fully and openly do that without putting yourself at risk. And then we think globally, places in the world where that's still not the case.
Right.
And so it's wonderful for him to be equipped with that.
Well, our son moved out of our home when there was over 100 anti-LGBT bills in state legislatures, over 30 states in all. Right now, there is a move among state legislatures to ban trans youth from sports programs in their schools. The state legislatures are trying to criminalize medical care for trans youth, life-saving and life-affirming medical care. So this riptide of hate that is coming at our community was the moment our son left our home to be a gay man in New York City.
Absolutely. There's still work to be done. So I hope everyone watching, we acknowledge that there's still a way to go for all of us to truly feel safe and to be our full selves. So,
well, when I came, to me, being gay and being political, being an activist are completely intertwined. You can't be gay and not political. It's a political act to be gay. And I think it's really important that all of us during Pride especially think about the ways in which we're trying to improve the lives of our community, improve the lives of everyone in our community.
Yeah, and that's something that you really focus on throughout the book in terms of teaching your son. You let him know, it's not just because it's something that may be more accepted nowadays doesn't mean that you aren't going to have to face situations where you have to be political and you have to get into those discussions. And I think you really nailed that throughout the book. Now, you teach your son a lot of things, and one of the things in particular that you don't really shy away from is talking about sex. You talk very candidly about your first sexual experiences and the lasting effects that it's had in your life. Can you talk to us about how you had the courage to disclose that, not just to your son, but to everyone who's reading your book, and why you thought that was important?
Yeah, I wrote the book at 5 a.m. When everybody else in my house is sleeping. And I think I lulled myself into this idea that I was just writing for myself. So then when people started to read it and saying, "Oh, you're so brave," I said to my husband, "What did I write that I shouldn't have written?" because it's a letter to our son, it kept me in a very narrow lane that I had to tell him everything, because it would be worthless if I hid anything. And it would have been very academic, not have the urgency that you talked about that the book has. We're not teaching our queer kids safe sex. They're not getting an inclusive sex education. They're not being taught how to take care of themselves or their partners. When I moved to New York, I knew nothing. My first sexual experience when I was 16, I was dating this guy, and after we fooled around in his bedroom, before we even sat up in the bed, he broke up with me. He said, we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. The second guy that I had sex with when I was in college said to me, I'm straight. And then he started kissing me, and we had this feverish, very short-lived affair until he said, I'm straight again, and broke up with me. I had no idea at 17 that it wasn't personal. I didn't know that there was nothing I can do to tame his self-loathing. And then the third guy that I had sex with hit me, punched me after intercourse. He said to me, he screamed, what did you just do? He was so angry at having enjoyed sex with a man. And what I talk about in the book, and what I've said to our son, is when you go to college, when you start to have sex with young people, you won't know where in their journey they are. They could be self-loathing, they could be closeted, they could have been abused or bullied. You have to walk this tightrope of trying to be vulnerable, which sex is a tightrope that I didn't know. You have to be vulnerable, but also protect yourself from taking on other people's baggage. And what I've said to him is take care of these young people you're going to be with, because you don't know what is going on for them. You won't know how they're feeling necessarily. And I really stress that I want him to be careful and be kind when he starts his sex life.
Absolutely. And what I love about that advice, Richie, and a lot of the advice that you give throughout the book, is that it's timeless. It doesn't matter what era or time we're in. These are, ideas that I think everyone should take into consideration. I got to be honest with you. I had a visceral reaction when I read that he punched you. I was like, that must be quite an experience to see that baggage come out so physically.
Well, it was so scary, but worse was I stayed with him. And I didn't understand that I had enough value to just say, I'm not going to be treated this way. And once again, that shame that lashed out at me, I was used to. That's what I thought having sex with men was, because I had experienced it twice before. I just thought that was part of it, this self-loathing that just came out during sex.
Absolutely. And you share your experiences for your son to be prepared if he does face those, which is very powerful. And I think a lot of folks who read it can also take that as well. But you also mentioned some elements of sex that maybe weren't so available when you were first exploring. And one of those in particular is Grindr. For those that don't know in the audience, it is an app on your phone you can use to locate other LGBTQ folks, particularly gay men in the area. Now I'm curious, Richie, if Grindr were around when you were younger, is that something that you would have used?
Voraciously. I think I would have loved it. I mean, I'm not sure I would have ever gone to class. One thing that I talk about in the book, and what I wish that my son would experience, is street cruising. Because when everybody's down on their phone looking for a hookup, they're missing this great ritual, this mating dance that we used to have, where you would walk down the street, see a cute guy, your eyes would meet, you'd keep walking, you'd look back, maybe they'd look back, you'd take a step, then they'd take a step, you'd both look back again, and then you'd go off and have sex.
It's a dance.
It's a dance, and it's gone because everybody's in their phones. I will tell you, I talk about that in my book, and my copy editor wrote in his copy edit of my first manuscript, he said, "Bullshit, Mr. Jackson. I don't think you want your son to meet a stranger and go have sex." And I said, "Yes, I do. That is part of the beauty of what it is to be gay. I want him to have all those experiences. I want him to do it safely. But I'm not going to pretend that as a gay man, I don't want that for him. As a parent, I might be nervous about it, but that's the conflict in the book."
Absolutely. And we see that theme throughout your advice as a gay man, your excitement for your son to explore, to experiment, to really dive into who he is. But then there's the dichotomy of being a parent and how you want to protect him and you want to take care of him.
Right.
And I'd love to switch gears and focus a little bit more on that parenting aspect, because I think it truly is what makes this book so beautiful, just as a dad and as a gay man, how you are able to balance that. So the first line in your book is, "The single dream and drive of my life has always been to be a father." Can you tell us a little bit about where this desire comes from and why it happened so early on?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a father. I never had sort of designs on any other thing. When I imagined or fantasized about being a grown-up, the only thing I ever saw in my head was parenting, being with a child. I think partly nothing for me, nothing that I thought of ever felt as vital than parenting. Also, I thought I would be good at it. I thought I would utilize things that I would be good at. And it's been my driving ambition. I only had two goals in my life: to be a father and to love someone. And the rest of my life has been pretty haphazard, just sort of one thing led to another, and then I found myself doing other things. But those two things, those were my goalposts.
Well, it's very humble of you, Richie. I know that throughout the book you mentioned how maybe some of your shortcomings as a parent have come through. I love how you beautifully tell your son that he is better at you in multiple things.
Everything. He is in all ways better than I ever was. He's a deeper thinker. He is more mischievous in all the best ways. He's had a wisdom from a very early age. When he was 5 and I told him not to do something that I thought he shouldn't, something he found self-soothing, he said to me, "Your job is to take care of me, not control me." That was 5 years old. He taught me how to parent him better. He has no people-pleasing skills, which growing up, that's my reflex was people-pleasing, and he has none of that. So he's way better in every way than I ever was.
That's lovely. Well, it definitely seems like you've taught him a lot and he's taught you a lot.
He's taught me a lot. Yeah.
So what would you say to a parent of a gay child or a parent who thinks they have a gay child?
Congratulations. I'm absolutely thrilled for your child, and I'm thrilled for you. I would say you have a choice. You can be your child's first trauma, their first obstacle, or you can help raise your child with good queer self-esteem. You can help them grow up feeling good about themselves. And I lay it out in my book because I had to do it for myself, and so many of us do, because we're not taught in our schools about ourselves. And I talk about teach your child LGBTQ history, not because it's homework, not because it's spinach, you have to know this, but because it will make them feel empowered. They will feel less alone. They will see they are part of this incredible continuum of people. Imagine if when we were all in elementary school and we learned that first time about Martin Luther King and the I Had a Dream speech, if we also were told right then that Bayard Rustin, a gay black man, helped organize that march, that would have been life-saving for so many of us. And then I talk about exposing your children, as I write to my son, to our culture, our writers, our artists, our all the culture that our community is famous for. That will help you understand how your otherness can be your superpower. I learned how to be gay. I learned the value of my otherness from writers. So I tell parents, expose your children to LGBTQ writers. And then, most important, because our schools fail our kids, is you have to teach your children how to take care of themselves and how to take care of their partners.
Absolutely. That history.
If they do that, they will have a more magical experience and life and a more incredible, diverse life than they ever imagined before. There's one parenting lesson, just one. You parent the child you have, not the child you thought you'd have or you thought you wanted. And if you do that, you will have an incredible journey with your child.
Absolutely. And I hope that advice rings loud to all the parents. I hope that's a message that we can share with parents and schools. And that's so true. It's history, not just, the history is important, not just for the sake of knowing it, but it allows us to truly be ourselves. And you mentioned in the book, oftentimes you don't want that history to be forgotten, whether it's going to museums and memorials, whether it's when you were young, going to funerals of folks who died from AIDS and you didn't even know them. Right. You wanted to preserve that history.
Right. I mean, first of all, let's talk, it's Pride, right? So it was it was trans people who stood up and fought back. It was a black trans woman who started our movement. We have to, especially during Pride, know our history, because we have so much richness and so much diversity that has gotten us here. It's not cis white men that got us here. And we have to understand our community is not only that. I don't want the people of my generation who died of AIDS to be forgotten. When I was 22, I went to a memorial or a funeral every weekend. My parents are elderly. They go to doctor's appointments and funerals. My friends did that in their 20s. And what I talk about in the book is I tell my son is he should follow on Instagram at the AIDS Memorial, which is this incredible account that honors the lives of people who have died of AIDS. Know those stories so that they will continue to live on. They won't be buried with my generation. And I wanted my son to know those stories so he'll understand me better. The ghosts that occupy a chamber of my heart, the doom that I still feel every day, and this sense of despair I haven't shaken.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Richie, for not only reminding us of the importance of knowing the history and persevering it, preserving it, but also for highlighting the important role that queer and trans people of color have played. I think, again, specifically in this month, we can celebrate the progress we've made, but we have to remember the inception of Pride, that it was marches, that it was protests, that it was a fight for our rights to live fully and openly. And again, that charge was largely led by queer and trans people of color. So I thank you so much for that. Now, I do have one or two more questions, but of course we want to hear from the audience. So if you haven't had a chance to plug in your question in the chat, please do so. We'll get to that in just a second. But Richie, I just had one last question about your book. I know everyone that's watching is going to read it because it's phenomenal, but if people could walk away remembering one thing from your book, what would that be?
That being gay is a gift, that being queer is a gift, that being a member of the LGBTQ community is a blessing. And it's only a blessing if we don't scrub it off, if we don't diminish it and demean it. If we do that, we'll break our own hearts. And so my message to everyone is, let's take this gift we've been given and let's use it every day, not only to fulfill our destiny and to make our heart stronger, but we're the ones who are best designed to heal this world. We create our lives. All of us make up our lives because there's no roadmap for queer people. What better group of people to now take this broken world of ours and fix it? It's our moment, and we ought to stand up all together and grab it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Richie. I know that that's something that folks will get out of this book after they read it. So we'll go ahead and go over. We'll go over to some of the questions and comments. Someone says, "Hey, Richie, thank you for being with us. Big fan of Short Bus."
Thank you.
And then a lot of folks are just +1ing to a lot of your comments. Beautifully said. We do have a question from Riggs. Thank you for all the work you've done and continue to do. How can gay folks get more involved in activism? How do you reach straight allies from other oppressed groups?
Right. So I think there's a lot of groups that are doing a lot of incredible work locally and nationally. And, you know, I talk a lot about them in my book, the organizations that I rely on and am part of. ACT UP in New York is still very active. Reclaim Pride is trying to make sure Pride is still a protest. There's Lambda Legal, which is fighting all of these Trump-Pence initiatives in court, and they're an incredible organization. Prep for All, which is critical, and especially as we talk about Black Lives Matters and what's happening now, is 1 in 2 Black gay men will be diagnosed with HIV in their lifetime nationally. So we need to widen the who's getting access to PrEP. We need to make it more affordable, and PrEP for All is fighting that fight. The other activism is voting. We have to vote, and we have to vote as if our lives depend on it, because they do. We have to vote because other people's lives depend on it, because they do. If you want to vote, if you want to be an activist for our community, vote and make our issues paramount to how you choose a candidate. And the way to get other allies is to say, we don't want allies anymore. I'm tired of people slapping a rainbow on their Instagram and saying, I support gay rights. What does that mean? I want advocates. I want people every day advocating for us. I want straight people who are making our lives and the danger we're in paramount to how they vote. And I want allies and to become advocates, and advocates to come out as advocates. There is a study that shows young people are 40% less likely to harm themselves if they have one accepting adult in their life, just one. And the extraordinary thing about that survey, about that study, is that one adult doesn't have to be a parent. So what I say wherever I speak is advocates have to come out and talk about being an advocate of the LGBTQ community, because the young people around them hearing that, it will save their lives. I hope I answered that question in some way.
Absolutely. And I mean, those are harrowing statistics. I think there's a lot at stake, and I do think there is a lot of work to be done. I really like the point you made, the distinction between allyship and advocacy. I think that's huge. And I think it's very timely when we think about what's happening now and in the whole world, but specifically in our country and with race relations.
Right. So what does Black Lives Matter when we talk about it as pride? Are we making sure our companies are saying Black queer lives matter too? Black trans lives matter too? And those of us who want to be supporters and want to figure out a way to help that movement, one of the things is to make sure we vote for candidates who are going to expand the ability for people to vote, to not limit it, not to block people from voting. There's lots we can do to be activists in our own life every day.
Absolutely. Well, here's to more allies becoming advocates in all these fights. We do have another question from Lauren. She wants to know if your son has read the book. I wanted to ask
good question. So here's the thing. I wrote the book, as you talked about, Ricardo, the urgency, because he was about to leave our home. He went to college. I handed him the book, and his professor handed him Plato. He put my book aside to read what he had to do for college. He just finished his freshman year, so I am expecting him to read it this summer.
Well, we're going to have a follow-up interview because the second part of the question is the reaction, and we'd love to know how he reacts.
When I asked him permission to write the book, and he said yes, and I would never have written the book if he had not been open to it. I said, I'm writing a book to teach you how to be gay. And he said, Dad, I know how to be gay. So that was his reaction before he read it.
Wonderful. We do have another question from Diana. If you had a daughter, would you let her street cruise?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, in my mind, I'm thinking a gay daughter, because I certainly wouldn't want my daughter to go to an apartment with a man by herself. But if it was, if it's a gay daughter, we have 2 sons, and I would love a daughter. And while we've been in quarantine, I keep saying to my husband, we got nothing but time. Let's have more children. So far, he hasn't said yes.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we have one more question. It has to do with what the audience members and I are seeing right now. You got a ton of books behind you. Can you let us know a little bit about what you're reading? Maybe share your top 3 books.
So I'm reading 2 books right now. One is Real Life by Brandon Taylor, which I've just started. And the other is Out of the Shadows, which is a book about the experience of being a gay man during the AIDS crisis and the effects it has had on men decades later. So I'm reading 2 books right now.
That's wonderful. And I will say for folks who haven't read the book yet, Gay Like Me, there are a ton of recommendations. I mean, it was just such a joy to have a list of people that I want to research and books I want to read and articles and plays and musicals that I want to see. So thank you for including those.
I would say I just finished Deviant's War, which is a history book about the gay rights movement. I recommend that highly.
Wonderful. Well, Richie, that is unfortunately all the time we have right now. I want to thank you so much, not just for joining us and being so open and vulnerable and talking about your book, but for all the work that we know you're doing. And it's going to continue to inevitably educate folks, inform them, and touch many lives. So thank you so much for your time, for your words, and
I enjoyed
your story. Of course.
Great talking to you.
I also want to take a second to thank the audience. We appreciate your questions and your engagement. Again, we acknowledge that it's a challenging time and there are other things that are top of mind for folks. So I send my love and support and solidarity, and I hope that everyone is taking care of themselves. And of course, a huge shout out to the Talks at Google team for giving me this opportunity to, to chat with someone so amazing. So Richie, do you have any?
I just want to thank everybody for joining us. I would wish everybody a happy Pride. I would remind everybody Pride is about protest. Pride is about activism. I would welcome everybody to read my book. It's available everywhere, and join me in this vital conversation about our beloved LGBTQ community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richie. And yes, everyone, buy the book. The link is in the description. It's phenomenal. I promise you will not be disappointed. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Richie. And I hope everyone's able to have the best rest of the week possible.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, y'all.